All right, so we are sharing out from ELUNA 2024. We had a handful of attendees this year, and Kirsty is going to start us off with some of the things that stood out to her, and I will be putting some links to resources from Ex Libris into the chat. Thanks, Kirsty.
Yeah, so two kind of themes that I saw this year in some of the presentations I went to was some very, very interesting developments in accessibility, specifically using Alma to deal with accessible materials for students with visual disabilities. And I'll come back to that in a minute. And then there were also a lot of presentations about resource sharing, ILL kinds of things, which I was interested in because we're not really doing it. But yeah, okay, yeah, so I'll come back to that in a minute. But so the accessibility piece. So first of all, there's a new ELUNA email list just for the discussion of accessibility issues. It was announced on the ELUNA announce mailing list just a few days before the conference started. There's not really any traffic on it right now, but basically there's this treaty that I was completely unaware of called the Marrakesh Treaty that says if libraries make copies of things specifically in order to make them accessible to patrons with disabilities, and those copies are only available to the patrons with disabilities, that is not a violation of copyright. More or less, publishers can't sue libraries for doing that. And once you make a copy, you are allowed to retain that copy in perpetuity. So that was pretty cool. And one of the presentations was on a joint project that's being done with ACRL and ELUNA that was trying to look into, can we use Alma basically to create like a little sub collection where we have materials that are specifically intended for use by students with visual disabilities. There were a couple of libraries that worked together with their disabilities offices to basically to create a special patron group. And then whenever they created the accessible materials, I think they might have used Alma Digital, but they could basically say anything that's in this collection is accessible to people in this patron group. So yeah, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, so the big thing is there's this new email list that's very low traffic right now, but look for more movement on how can we use our systems to make things accessible to our students who need them. And then the other thing was there were a bunch of presentations on using Alma for resource sharing in ways that maybe don't require you to have Iliad or Tipasa or things like that. Which is interesting to me because none of the Seattle colleges are really doing ILL. Like we say we do ILL, but we don't. And it revealed to me that there are things that you can do in Alma to allow delivery of, say, article scans, borrowing physical materials from other libraries and manage that completely in Alma. I mean, it also sounds like it takes a lot of effort on the front end. Like you have to actually contact other libraries and set things up with them to agree to, to share. But a couple little tidbits that I learned is that some of the folks who have done that are able to get articles for their students in like 2 to 3 hours in the middle of the night because the Australian Alma libraries are filling the requests. So like, that was kind of cool. And I'm wondering for the future, is there something we can do with that, like either just in the WACTA-CLIC consortium, where we set up resource sharing among all of us, or can we extend that to, would Orbis Cascade also be willing to join in some sort of resource sharing agreement with our consortium? And I don't understand a lot of it right now, but again, there were several presentations that are now up on the ELUNA repository that I want to take a look at in more detail when I have the time, which I never will. There was a Canadian presentation that was especially good, not because it was a fantastic presentation and they had a really good sense of humor and they provided lots of excellent information, but also they have a Spotify playlist of all Canadian artists to go along with their presentation. So those were the big things for me.
Was that the collaborative accessible future taking steps to improve the Primo V experience from Ontario?
I don't think so. It was on the very last day of the conference. Oh,
It says day 3.
maybe.
I don't know.
I'll while other people are talking, I'll look things up and I'll put the presentation names in the chat.
Um, yeah, so I noticed the accessibility theme as well. But I also noticed there was a fair amount of like, how do we do our like user interface? So not disability accessibility, but like UX usability. And so a couple of the things that I attended um, that gave me ideas for our own like activities as a group included a presentation by the discovery lead for the Swiss Library Platform Services Group. And of course, they've got a whole team in a central office. But a couple of things that they do that I thought were really awesome. They have a customization group for Primo. So it's a small group from their like 300 libraries, 500 libraries across 80 institutions because they have hospitals and all kinds of stuff. So they have a small group of like Primo and dev experts who do customization projects and then like share them out. And then they have a larger group that works a little more asynchronously and they call it their discovery expert pool. And they use that group to answer questions, get feedback, and it's through that group that they rolled out a big usability study of their Primo to see how users interacted with it. And it was funny because she said that librarians see the interface very differently from users. So things that librarians were like, this is great. Um, Users did not have the same reactions. And so from the usability study and from the discovery expert pool, they put together what she calls a master template for Primo. So this wasn't a customization package. It was a configuration package. So it was like, check this mark in, this box in on the first screen in the first tab, and it will do this. And they use that as their basic setup. And then they still allow their institutions to do customization on top of that, but it means that users moving between the different institutions get some of the same functionality between the views, even if like the branding and individuality is kept. So I've already reached out to her to find out like what kind of other insights they got from the usability study, more specifically for a copy of their master template, like how they figure that out, because it's not like you can just export, all the check boxes. So they, like, do you do screenshots? Do you list it out in an Excel sheet? Um, so that was super cool. She also talked about um, the way they organize, like, not exactly service levels, but how they interact with institutions. And she referred to them as uh, self-coordinated and centrally coordinated. And I thought that was a really interesting concept for perhaps our libraries to identify where they, like, you might want more centrally coordinated management of your Primo view, but self-coordinated e-resources, or vice versa or something. And giving that kind of designation would provide a better understanding, I think, for me of where people need support, um, and like which institutions could maybe band together to share work. So I'm exploring how that might like fit into our open calls or our project groups, or even, like down the road, like the fees that you pay into Whack to Click. Like maybe if you want everything centrally managed, you won't have one person doing five people's jobs, and you pay a little bit more into the Whack to Click fees. I don't know. Um, you know, so there are a lot of cool ideas out of that presentation for me. Um, and of course, she was like, wait, you do all of those different things for 28 schools? And I was like, well, yes, but I have, like there are folks at the libraries who do the things, and we meet very regularly. Um, and then the other kind of cool Primo tool, and I'd already started playing with it, so I was excited to see a session about it, was the resource recommender tool. Someone did a session comparing the use of resource recommender to discovery import profiles for managing putting A to Z databases and LibGuides content into Primo. Um, so, she went through the pros and cons of um, using both methods for either thing, as well as kind of for local collections. She mostly focused on like the Spring Share content. Um, and so, so that was really cool because I had just started playing with Resource Recommender. If you recall the LibKey Nomad banner, that a few schools have already, Grace Harbor, Big Bend. I don't know who else may have made one. Cool. So that it was cool to see how how they had gone about deciding where the best payoff for time and effort was, in either automating and not getting as much control over what data came in, or manually creating and managing with the resource recommender, but having, like a lot of ability to, tweak and fiddle and etc. Um, so those were kind of my two big primo ones. There were some other sessions I went to that I think might make good like mini trainings. There was someone who talked about creating um custom material types, um, and the process that they went through at the time, given the tools that were available through Alma at the time, and how they might have done it differently now. So I thought that was like potentially a good conversation, um, that a few people might be interested in exploring. Um, of course, I went to a few analytics ones, and Florida Virtual has a really great iPads dashboard, and they had a session talking about how it worked. Um, and I learned cool things, but it would not work for us. So it's like, bummer. Um, and then I also went to a session about sharing stats across libraries, because your analytics environments are entirely siloed from each other for, like data privacy, all kinds of reasons. Um, and it's interesting, the solutions, and it was Tamara from Orbis Cascade who did that session, the solutions that they've come up with. She's done some tried to do some like uploads into analytics data visualization. They tried to do like a JavaScript app that they put on GitHub, for one of the things that they wanted to be able to do via shared analytics, um, which it's a scenario that doesn't apply to us. But one of the things that I'm thinking about kind of exploring over the summer, is whether or not scheduled reports, getting emailed to like the Whack to Click email and then like uploaded centrally could be workable. Because then I wouldn't have to go in and run the report in every single institution if we want to kind of keep an eye on circulation or equipment checkout or whatever. So yeah, there were definitely some interesting things. There was also a lot of Ex Libris stage time. So I see that Bobby has joined us. Um, do you want to share out anything of particular interest, Bobby? We're not making anything too formal.
No, I learned a lot with the analytics, and the the next patron screen update that's coming. That one, I talked to the person for a while, and it seems it's going to be good, but in the same note, it's going to be a lot of training for staff because everybody's used to the look we have now, and going to 3 panes or 2 panes. I think a lot of them are just a little freaked out. So I don't know if anybody else is going to run into that, because I'm trying to put together a little presentation I can give them beforehand to say, don't be nervous. It's going to be okay. This is what it's going to look like now.
Yeah, and I think that the change in the Primo UI will be huge. Do you happen to remember what they've got for the timeline on the rollout?
If I remember right, it was August, September, the opt-in, and then around November was the everybody's going to get it. Because I remember it was before the end of the year, before the end of the quarter, which is going to be bad
Annoying.
for us. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe those of us who are feeling so inclined, we could work together on that kind of presentation and like get something recorded, offer it multiple times live, and kind of get the word out to our librarians, so that all of the training isn't just falling on, one person at each school. Yeah, and I of course ended up missing that session for something else. Um, but I know that there's going to be a lot of materials out there. And kind of one of the reasons why I was like, hey, maybe a Primo template would be a good idea, if we're going to see massive changes anyway. Maybe kind of standardizing what that change looks like across the state. Um, yeah, that was Primo UI was kind of a big topic. I think it was interesting. Ex Libris wanted to make AI a big topic, and most of the attendees were like, "Hi, keep your AI and make the stuff work that you've already put out there." Um, so, um, yeah, were there, did anyone like have a chance to look at sessions or, like have any questions about scuttlebutt we may have heard? What I will do then, well, if you want to like think for a second, is just make sure that you guys are all aware that I've got the summer schedule of drop-ins and um nope, not that one. There we go. Um So summer workshop schedule and registration for the workshops, but there'll also be weekly drop-ins. Um, I'm out some of the Julys, but Wednesdays 10 to 11 a.m. We'll just kind of have an open call for whatever's going on, or if you just need someone to take a coffee break with because you're in the library by yourself. Um, the workshop schedule, I use the survey results that I gathered over the last couple months to look at what topics were like high interest and like people who said they were interested would likely be around in the summer. So not the part-time or the part-time faculty. Um, with any luck, these will just kind of get polished up over the summer and we can like do some more. But it's just something else to have in our recorded workshop bank. So there'll actually be two different sessions of e-resources cleanup. Um, they'll be like essentially the same except for whatever discussion or problems come up. Um, there'll be a creating documentation series, an advanced analytics series, and a longer 1 day Primo accessibility session. So they start in the next couple of weeks. Well, I guess it really is like 3 weeks, but it seems like it's going to be tomorrow as quickly as this year is going, and continue through August. So I've tried to not stack things too much beginning, middle, or end, and still have something going on so we can connect. So these are on the website, either under training and education, or if you go to the open calls The link is there as well. And we don't have too many more of our regularly scheduled spring open calls. The June 4th Alma training will be Open Refine and Mark Edit. Thanks to Isaac at Shoreline. And I've got links to download those programs that they sent me. So I'll share those out before the end of the week. On June 11th, we'll have another kind of follow-up on those of you who have LibKey set up or are working towards getting it live. And then our last official spring open call will be a fiscal year rollover forum discussion. I'll kind of review the process so that everyone gets the refresher, and then we can discuss like issues or specificities with your environment if you need that support. So that's what's going on for the next month or so. I anticipate that the ideas that are percolating out of ELUNA will kind of develop into something more as I connect with people who gave the presentations. And I always welcome anyone else who wants to give a presentation or do like an instructional session if you learn something cool. We certainly don't need to just listen to me all the time. So, but yeah, I think most of the ELUNA stuff is either on the site that I shared at the beginning of the meeting. I'll share it again. And if you need the member login for the ELUNA documentation site, it is like just a generic one. So just email me and I can share that with you, and you'll be able to access the slides and notes from all of the past things that are available. And yeah, any questions that have risen to the top of your brains?
Where's the next one gonna be?
It is in Atlanta. And because of weird pandemic scheduling, they actually had to change the date of it. So typically conferences of this size get booked like 3 years in advance. Well, that was 2022. They didn't know like if they were going to be having it. I think they lucked out with Minneapolis that it was available. So next year's will be June 16th through 20th, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
And yeah, in Atlanta. So yeah, that's not ideal timing, I know, for our community, but we'll see what happens. And I think from, summer 26 on, it'll be back in its regularly scheduled time frame, because they like will have known like, oh yeah, we're going back in person, so we can actually book something. So we are looking at 2 different regional conferences this coming fall. So if you're thinking like that you might have a little bit of budget for professional development, but June in Georgia is not feasible, there will be the WLA Academic Library and Oregon ACRL joint conference at Reed College in Portland. And Reed's library is super fun in all nooks and crannies and old building and crazy. And that will be October 27th. And the call for proposals is open. I should probably share that out generally. And then in mid-November, here in Spokane, we will be hosting Inland Info Lit, which went on hiatus for a few years, but it's a one-day conference that brings together instructional designers, faculty, librarians, and that will be held, presumably, we're still finalizing, but at the Spokane Public Library Hive, which is the like art creator, I don't know what they call it, but yeah, so there are some opportunities. Like Portland is technically out of state, but it's also a one-day thing. So there are some opportunities to connect with fellow academic librarians here locally, and we'll just keep learning together. And yeah, I don't know. I won't be able to go to ELUNA next year. It's my kid's birthday. There's just some non-negotiables, at least until she's older and doesn't want me around. But this coming Monday, we do have a circulation topic theme meeting. So if anyone has something they'd like to bring up, I will say on the library director listserv, they've been talking about fines and fees and forgiveness. And so I'll probably just start with a bit of a summary about, like what folks do if they have posted to that discussion. But if you have other circulation issues you'd like to bring up at that meeting, please let me know. I always feel like end of the school year, it's all about collecting items and making sure overdue notices are going out and that student expiration dates and due dates are correct and calendars are getting updated. So, but yeah, I feel like I'm still tired from ELUNA. I don't know if you agree, Kirsty and Bobby, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I took a week vacation after ELUNA, and I'm still trying to catch up.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
yeah. So, all right. Well, hi dogs. If there's I'll stop recording.